Awesome. Hey, everyone. As Manu said, I'm Paul. I'm going to try to keep it, my talk is about performance and instruments, but I'm going to try to keep it lighthearted because I know the time of the day as well. And being Spanish, it's peak siesta time right now, so yeah, I'm feeling it as well. Welcome to my talk, tuning your app using instruments. As Manu said, my name is Paul. I'm a senior software engineer based in Manchester, but I'm originally from Barcelona in Spain. My accent is very strange. I'm aware of that. My fiance is from Glasgow in Scotland. I lived in the north of England for about, I was counting earlier to prepare this, for about 11 years now, I think, with a little break in Spain in between. And if you think everyone in the UK speaks with like British English and it's the same accent everywhere, you're completely wrong. I live in Manchester. From Manchester to Liverpool, it's a 30-minute train, and the accent is completely different. Like, it's night and day, essentially. So if I say weird things throughout the talk, that's why. Also, there's a lot of ways of saying, like a bun for a burger. There's like about 20 different ways of saying that in the UK, depending on where you live. So yeah, that's another fun fact. I work as a software engineer at RevenueCat in the developer experience team. And as Manu said, I collect football shirts. I'm a big football fan. I've been doing it since I was a kid. This is the latest edition. I think this is my new tradition. I'm going to add the latest T-shirt that I buy in every talk. So this is the Bologna shirt that I bought. We elevated the experience a bit. We actually went to the game. Don't know if elevated experience describes the match, but yeah. Dalinga. I also, in another life, I used to DJ, and what you do with your hobbies when you're in tech is you basically build apps that fuel them. So I built a football app on my own so I can collect the experiences of going to football games. And with my good friend Hide, who was also a DJ, and we met through conferences, and we both collect records, so it's like a bit of a match made in heaven there. We built an app called Now Playing, which basically elevates your Apple Music experience, and it gives you a lot of facts and trivia about your favorite artists. But what we're probably best known for, Hide and I, is Helm. So Helm is an App Store Connect client now for iOS and macOS that we started about a year and a half ago, and I'm really, really happy to hear the mentions that it's been getting through the conference, especially from Arcadius. I think this is the reason why we make software. We want to make the experience in App Store Connect as accessible and as seamless as we possibly can. We built some fun features along the way, like we have a passport in Helm. So basically, when you meet people, for example, in conferences like this, you can essentially exchange stamps of the people you meet. This might seem like a weird thing to do, but it's fully functional. The reason we built this is so that then you can actually see your stamps and add them to your test flight groups. So basically, you add them by name and email instead of having a huge list of anonymous testers. You just have people who you've actually met, and you know what app they build, so you can kind of like associate with that. We recently launched Helm 2.0, which has been glassified, and it fits right into the ecosystem of macOS 26 and iOS 26. I can take little credit, really, for the icon, for the update. That was all Hide, really, because he's the designer out of the two. And we wanted to do something as well. We are offering a Helm Pro yearly discount. It's only available today, so I'm going to leave that for a few seconds before I move on. And yeah, it's a pretty big discount, and it will be applicable for a full year. Awesome. You can ask me later if you didn't catch it. But why is Helm important to this talk, and why am I waffling about it, apart from actually promoting the app that I built? Hide and I have very different skills when we build apps. He's a designer turned developer, and I'm more of an engineer by trade. I've been an engineer my whole career. That's my background. And we work in a way that he builds the UI, he focuses on the design, and he's very good at like interactions, animations in SwiftUI, and all that kind of stuff. And I'm more into like the data side, so I build all the backend integrations. I focus more on performance and all that kind of stuff. So a lot of the times, the messages that I get from Hide are more or less like this, where basically he has built like some part of the UI. The UX is great, but we kind of need some performance improvements, and he kind of leaves that up to me. Or he builds like a bit of the UI with some mock struct, and then I build the rest of the kind of like infrastructure behind it. Professionally, I have also worked on performance a lot at companies. This is from a previous job. I spent 6 months working on performance, which was a bit too much. So we were kind of like a task force just working on performance, and my task was basically to try and fix all of the memory leaks in the app. This is my highlight. I think one day I will print it and frame it and show it to my vibe coding grandkids, or kids probably, to be honest. And I will show them what life used to be before all of this. Yeah, I spoiled the joke, but yeah, I spoiled the joke anyway. But basically, the whole 72 node cycle was caused by a classic missing weak self. So the way to fix it, after like hours and hours of investigation, it was just putting a weak self, which is always the case. So something you need to know about me, I promised my mom I would not swear on stage, and I'm abiding by that rule. So it's play your own game, you do your own adventure, you put whatever you want in those asterisks. But yeah, I'm going to talk to you about what instruments are and how they can actually help you debug better. So instruments are a set of tools that developers can use to analyze their app's performance and resource usage. This sounds very vague, and it sounds like just something that we would measure CPU count. There is a lot that you can do with instruments. You can even look at reality kit, scenes. You can look at foundation models, actually. And it's extremely underused, and it's an incredible resource that we have as developers for looking at performance. The way you launch instruments is you will be presented with this set of templates. Please don't call these instruments. These are templates. Once you open a template, you will get a set of instruments bundled together in the template. You launch them by going into Xcode, pressing Command-I, or going to the product menu and pressing Profile. And then you select a specific template, and you launch the instruments window. You can also run it standalone, so you don't need to download instruments separately. It's bundled with an Xcode download, but it runs as a standalone app. So you can just launch it, attach to literally any process. And the cool thing is you can edit the target and modify the contents of the package inside it. So if you want to build under different circumstances, maybe load some like heavy resources or something like that, you can do that. Something I learned recently is that you can profile tests using instruments. So if you've got, like, if you're building an algorithm or something like that, you can literally right-click on the little, I don't know what you call them, I call it diamond, the thing that sometimes appears, sometimes it doesn't. So if you are lucky enough to get the diamond, you can right-click on it. Don't know why it sounded funny to get the diamond. And then you can click on profile, and it will launch instruments, and you can just profile from there. Now, if you've not been living under a rock, you will know that there's been a new Xcode release, there's been a new design system, new OS. Like, we've been super, super busy with the whole Xcode 26 release. Everything's been glassified, and now when you tap on a button, you're kind of scared that it's going to break because it's glass. That was a terrible joke. But yeah, we got 4 new instruments with Xcode 26. So we've got a power profiler to look at your battery usage, power usage in your app. We've got a new SwiftUI template. We've got a processor trace, and we've got the foundation models instrument. I've given this talk before, and I didn't talk about the foundation models one, but it seemed quite fitting given the talk that we've just had. So you've learned how to use instruments. I'm going to show you very, very quickly a cool trick on how to kind of optimize if you think they're quite slow. So the way you launch the foundation model instrument is quite hidden, but you go into any of the templates, or you select a blank template, then you press on instrument and search for foundation models, and then you just add it as a lane. Then you click on record, and then you're going to see in Now Playing, we actually use foundation models a lot to summarize content. So you can see there's a summary there, and that's getting generated by foundation models. And you can see there's a bunch of data, so that's from when the summary is generated. And this data looks a bit like this. I know instruments is very hard to parse, but you need to know there's 2 different things that you can see. So there's asset loading, so what the system is doing, what resources it's loading, the models that it's loading. And then the session, which will define basically every request that you do, the tokens that it uses. You can get a breakdown. how many calls it's done, if you're using tools as well, how it loads them and stuff. So if you're not quite sure how things work, go into instruments, launch the foundation models instrument, and start looking around. There's an incredible resource, and I'm not going to spoil it because I want you to check out the article, because I only knew through the article, so it's worth that Artem gets all the credit. There is a one line of code that you can do at the beginning of your app launch that will actually speed up the first interaction you have with foundation models. So you basically can pre-warm resources that you load, and you can pre-warm them for specific prompts as well. And that's a big performance improvement for the first interaction with foundation models, which is quite good. The other new instrument that I'm going to talk about very briefly as well, I wish I could talk about it more, is processor trace. So they've released this new instrument. It's very, very similar to the CPU profiler, to the time profiler as well, in that it actually shows all of the calls that your app makes to your methods, to your Swift code, and also to the library code, to the Swift library code and the lower level code. The way CPU profiler and time profiler works is that they work by sampling data. So on an interval, they collect data, and they apply some algorithms, and you can actually choose how quick this interval is to get better quality data. But basically, the problem with the sampling approach, even though it's quite good for long-running tasks, is that you might miss some data in between the intervals, essentially. The way Apple has mitigated this is by introducing the processor trace, which basically streamlines every single call that goes through your CPU to a location in disk, and then whenever you need it, it loads it into instruments, and you can basically get a breakdown. And there's no data missing here. So all of these single calls are streamed to a location, to a database, and then they're loaded onto instruments, which is amazing. This is the very good news. The bad news, I couldn't use it. So I couldn't run it on device. The problem seems to be that my device is not allowed to run it. But I seem to meet all of the requirements, so I'm not quite sure what's going on there, because I have the new iPhone. I've got a Mac with M4. I can actually run it on my Mac. The way you do it is by enabling, you have to actually enable a setting in privacy and security called processor trace. And before you say, I have looked for the setting on iOS. That's a very me thing that I complain about it, and then it's actually a setting that I haven't turned on. I have looked for it. I couldn't find it in the developer menu. It just doesn't show for me, but this is from a WWDC slide. This is basically what it looks like. You just turn it on, and technically, you should be able to use it. Now, before we dive in, there's going to be some live coding. So it could go very, very well, or it could go horribly wrong. But before we dive in, I'm going to quickly introduce a concept that I think all of you will be familiar with, but the rest of the talk will not make sense if you're not familiar with this concept. So the concept is that all UI work, and this is the golden rule of front-end development in general, not just iOS, is that all UI work must take place on the main thread. So if you've used observable object, or if you actually use it these days, and you try to update a publish property from a thread that's not the main thread, you will get these runtime warnings. I cannot begin to tell you how many times this has sneaked into production in projects that I have worked on, because it's a runtime warning, so there's no guarantee that you're going to get a compile error out of it. With the newer observable macro, you don't get this, because you don't have published properties anymore. But with Swift 6 and with what Antoine has talked about today, you actually can get compiler errors, which is a lot safer, and then it kind of prevents that like sneaking into production. I realize that oftentimes I forget, and I used to work in a company that had to support like iOS 12, so I never got to use all these features. And now that I work on like indie apps a lot, and we actually target iOS 26 for 2 of them as minimum, I do forget, and I say like back in the days of observable object, but I realize that it's present time for a lot of people. So that's why I still kind of like include it in the talk. When these issues sneak into production, or if you're not applying like strict concurrency, you will get a lot of feedback like this and a lot of errors like this. This is an error from Now Playing. And the way we fixed it, you will not be surprised, but the problem was with the album content property, the way we fixed it. Does anyone want to take any guesses of how we fixed it? I wish. we fixed it by just doing an await main actor.run. And I'm really glad that we have these APIs now, because it's so much easier to get through, to fix bugs and get it through review than the dispatch main async after days, where everyone was like very wary when you added this. But to be honest, it makes complete sense. We had a non-isolated, like concurrent method. We were updating a UI property from the background, so that kind of solution made a lot of sense. I really like this article from Brent Simmons about how NetNewsWire handles threading. It's from, I believe, 2021. It's from a while ago, but a lot of the concepts still apply. And my favorite quote is that the best way to handle concurrency is just not to do it at all. And you might think that's like unfair and like that's not true, but it's the way that Apple is going, right? Like you're going to have things that are single-threaded by default, and you're going to have like approachable concurrency, and then you, at the points where you need to optimize and you need to send things out of the main thread, then you actually decide where to put it. And this is exactly what NetNewsWire were doing 4 years ago, where they run everything on the main thread, and then every module that they had, where they had to do a database operation, they dispatched to a background, and then they always returned on the main thread. So their concurrency structure was actually very simple, but very effective. And as I said, this is what approachable concurrency is. A lot more complicated. I very simplified it, but it pretty much is that. But this comes with a counterpart, right? So if you put everything on the main thread, and your main thread is busy with non-UI work, then bad things start to happen, actually. And I really like the Simpsons meme, where they're trying to say, you've got so many diseases, but you can't really, it's not affecting you because they can't go through the door. So it's the same as like with UI work, right? So if you've got so much other stuff going on, your update cannot go through the door, it's blocked, and you cannot really update your UI. When this happens, you usually get hitches, freezes, hangs, however you wanna call them. This is an incredible graph that I use all the time from a WWDC session. It defines what kind of hangs occur and what timings. And for me, unless you're doing something that's like drawing or a game that needs to be very responsive, usually I only really care about hangs that are over 250 milliseconds. So anything that's a micro hang or higher, anything that's below and doesn't occur very often, then it's probably safe to ignore. We've got, as I said, we've got instruments, so we've got very nice visual, scary representations. These micro hangs, severe hangs, they actually pair up with a color in the instruments lane. So blue is for a micro hang, for example, and they keep getting scarier as you go up in time. And there is a setting quite hidden in Developer that I would encourage everyone to turn on. And for all your test flight apps and all the apps that you run with debug mode, there is hang detection. So we'll show a nice little toast at the top of the screen when a hang occurs in one of your apps. And then there will be hang logs. It's not super useful in my experience, the hang logs, but it kind of gives you an opportunity to know when a hang occurs, and it kind of just brings it to the foreground. And yes, stuff happens from time to time, and I'm not here to actually diagnose. I'm here to cure. So basically, I don't want to tell you these things are not going to happen, because they actually are going to happen. If you have a big app, you're going to have data races, you're going to have concurrency issues, you're going to have hitches, hangs, but eventually you need the right tools to actually be able to fix them in a reasonable time. So today, I'm going to actually talk to you about a feature that we built in Now Playing, which is the profile. So profile feature is fairly complex because it needs to add an image, remove an image, it needs to save to a database, it needs to read from a database, it needs to allow editing of a text field, it updates other things in that UI. And when I first built it, I very, very quickly realized that I was doing things wrong and it didn't work very well. So we put it on a beta. People started complaining that it was a bit slow, so we just decided to like optimize it. And today I'm going to run you through the real-world process that I followed to optimize this, and some of the things that I did. Okay, so just scary time. Okay, let me make sure that I do this right. Okay, can you see? Yeah, you can. Okay. So if you want to know which apps I use on a day-to-day or rate my home screen, here's your chance. OK, perfect. So the first thing that you have to do is, let me just move this a bit, is go to Product and then Profile. I've pre-profiled so that it doesn't take forever, but it's going to take forever at some point in the talk, because I'm going to have to apply some fixes. Here, as I said, you've got your template, so I'm going to just pick SwiftUI. And then you're presented with the default settings view, where you've got on your left-hand side, you've got all the recordings with all the runs that you've done with instruments. You also can select the instruments that you want to use. So in this case, it's going to be SwiftUI, time profiler, hangs, and hitches. And then to get it to start, you literally just press record. So this is going to launch your app in release mode. And then you can literally just interact and look at the areas where you want to optimize the performance. So first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to try and edit the profile. I'm going to press a few times. You can see the hang thing at the top. That's the hang detection. So then I'm going to edit a bit. You see that it's incredibly laggy. I'm going to cancel. And then finally, when I think I've got enough data, I just pause it. And then we can take a look at that data. That hang is a lie. It's not a real hang. It's just because it's detaching from instruments. And this is always the fun part of the talk, because I have to wait a lot around. OK, cool. So when we're presented with instruments, can everyone see sort of OK? I'm going to zoom in areas, but otherwise I can use zoomed. I can zoom in a bit more if not. Basically, you're presented with this view where you've got the different instruments that you want to use that you've selected before. So we've got SwiftUI, we've got some data. We can see some events over here. We've got the time profiler, which is going to give us all of the methods that we're calling our app and in the system libraries as well, originating from our app. And it's going to split it by thread as well. The CPU usage, that's pretty much the same. So you can pick and choose between the two of them. I would have loved to use the processor trace, but yeah, unfortunately, it didn't really work for me. So what I would do at this point is I would usually focus on the areas where I've got a lot of hitches. So I can see here I've got a micro hang, right? So what I can do is I can click on the micro hang, right-click. I'm going to zoom in a bit, and then I can set the inspection range and zoom. So this is immediately just going to focus on the area that I'm interested in. So you can see that it selected that area. It has zoomed in, but I immediately zoomed out after, so it wasn't very useful. But we know there's a hang, and it's told us, but it doesn't really give us a lot of information down here in the details panel. So whenever we have a lane selected, you have the information for that lane for the selected portion in the details panel underneath. So we can see how long it took for the micro hang. It's 270 milliseconds, so it's over the 250 line. And then what we can do at this point is I think the power of instruments always comes from having instruments in conjunction, so not just having one, but actually pairing up with the things that you want to use. So now that I know this is the area, I can already see some suspicious data over here. So I'm going to open the SwiftUI instrument, and you can see that we've got some different lanes over here. So we've got the view body updates, representable updates, and other updates. For me, the most important one is the view body updates. So what this means, this will collect how long it takes to render your view. And this is not magic. It's how long it takes to compute the body computed property. And because this gets computed on every single render, then you actually need to be very, very fast with what you do in there. And by the looks of things, if I select it, it looks like I'm not being very fast in one specific view, which is the profile picture. So I can literally go into the details panel over here. I've got the summary of view body updates. I can go directly onto now playing. You can actually see system libraries and different frameworks, but I always tend to focus on what I have control over, which is now playing, my own target. I don't particularly, if there's nothing else, I would look into the SwiftUI views to see if I'm setting something up wrong. But because I've got some now playing views here, I can focus on them. Now, some tips that I will give you, try to ignore the duration and focus on the average duration of your renders. So duration will actually collect through that time span that you have selected. It will collect how long in total it took to render your views, however many times it took. So I would just go usually here. I would filter by average duration. And then I can see that the one that's highest is my profile picture. So we can see that updates take 2.7 milliseconds on average. This might not seem like a lot to you, but what I like to do at this point is compare it with other views, right? How long are other views taking? What's a good baseline for me? And what I tend to find is that your views, your body updates should be on the microseconds, not on the milliseconds. If you're in the milliseconds, you usually have some problems, and you need to basically go ahead and fix some stuff. So we know we have a view that's in now playing that is profile picture. So we know which view it is. Now we need to know why profile picture is actually taking so long to render. You can go onto the view now in SwiftUI in Xcode and start putting print statements and all that stuff. But I don't want to lose you yet. I want you to stay in instruments because there's more than you can do over here. So what I tend to do at this point is go onto the CPU usage. And for this region, I go on the main thread. And at this point, I start looking at what the details panel is actually telling me. So I can see there is some gibberish. It's not really gibberish, like it has some meaning, but it's system libraries, and I don't really understand what they actually do. But I can see that it's the heaviest stack trace. So I know this is the thing that's causing my body render to slow down. This is the thing that's taking up the most time. So at this point, I only, again, really care about calls from now playing, which I have control over. So I will go here to the call tree. This is another good tip. And I will hide system libraries. So you get rid of all the noise from the Apple frameworks, and you just focus on what your app is doing. And you can see that things have changed a bit, but they have changed for the worse. So can someone tell me what this method does? OK. So basically, this happens a lot in instruments. The way you fix it is you go and locate the dissim. So you press on that. And for anyone who was in Leeds, I don't know if there was anyone in Leeds here, this didn't work in my last live demo. So let's hope for the best. This is derived data, the place that we always love to delete. It comes in handy this time. You can go into your products, your release folder. Remember that instruments, by default, you can change this. But by default, it will build for release, and it will profile for release, which makes a lot of sense. And then if you scroll, you will actually see there's a dissim file somewhere in there. You can just press it, add, and then things disappear. Something annoying is that it will clear your filter, but I think it's because it just re-renders the whole tree. So go back again, hide system libraries again. And then over here, we can already see, oh, I'm so relieved that this worked, actually. We can already see, thank you. We can already see some changes, right? And we can see that the heaviest stack trace now makes a lot of sense. We've got our body getter, which is the thing that's very, very slow for us. This is the heaviest stack trace, and it takes 1.60 milliseconds. And what's taken so long is actually initializing an image. So we can, let me see if I can do this in a better way. I can just tap on this, and then I can go directly to Xcode from here. And then it's going to take me directly to the line that I have to change. So this is really the power of instruments. You can, without having to put print statements, you know exactly what has gone wrong. You've jumped directly to the line that you need to fix, and you can basically apply the fix. Who thinks that I'm going to do the fix live now? Yeah, you're absolutely wrong. There's no chance. So I have some stashes. So I'm going to just apply that. Basically, what you're going to see here is that, yeah, you see how fast I type? It just all changed now. What I did over here is I just moved the profile image creation to when I fetch it from the database, rather than doing it on every single render. It might seem very obvious, and this highlights that you should be really, really wary of what you do in computed properties, in your views, in your models. And you should really, if something is not really performant, you should really move it to a state property or to an observable object as a stored property, sorry. So that's basically how you fix the first issue. I'm going to actually run again. And the rest of the talk, I'm not going to profile again, because you're going to see how long it takes now, so I don't want to do it again. But I'm going to give you pro tips from now on until the end of things that I found very, very useful, and I think a lot of people don't know, and people come up to me after the talk, and they go like, oh, I didn't really know about that. So I'm going to try and show you my process in this way. You can already see that it's, yeah, it's taking a while. I think this is compiling for release, so it's always going to take longer, and I think this is more of a now playing compilation issue than Xcode itself. I think it's just taking quite some time. And this is the moment where I start to rumble, because I need to fill the silence. Can play some music. Yeah, I should have come prepared. But I said no audio, though, so I'm not going to do that to them. Oh, no chance. Yeah. I learned I'm one for sharing secrets and going to revoke them straight after. So yeah, I'm not doing that again. Right. So now that we've fixed this issue, you would usually just rerun it again. But I'm going to add a couple more instruments, and I'm going to show you why in a second. These two instruments that I'm going to add, they're going to help you filter through the noise, and they're going to help you identify things in the instruments window. So the first one is OSLog. And the second one is signpost. Now, who here uses print statements over unified logging? Yeah? OK. This might change your mind a bit, OK? So this is my ode to actually use unified log system as much as you can. If you actually want to log something, it's usually going to have, I know you can do dynamic strings with the logger and everything. I understand that. But if you're just printing, this process started, I'm doing this, use OSLog, use the logger, because it's actually going to have a knock-on effect on other stuff. So I'm going to try and find it here. So here I'm basically, is the font size OK? Or should I make it bigger? Bigger? Yeah? Make it a bit bigger. OK. So basically here I've got some logs when I cancel and when I start an edit. So whenever I press that button that I showed you earlier, the little pencil and the X, the pencil is start, the X is cancel. So I'm going to go over here, and I'm going to run again. And I'm going to show you how this actually comes in handy. So whenever I tap on this, and I press X a few times, we're going to stop the session. And I'm going to show you why you should really, really use OSLog over print statements, because it will really help you. And I don't know how you felt when I showed you the initial window with all the red, yellow, all those dots. It's really, really overwhelming. It's very hard to remember. I'm a very forgetful person, so that's why I love automation and I love all this stuff, so I don't forget things. But as soon as I finish and I finish recording, I forget in what order I did things. So this is a way to not have to remember, basically. So if I open OSLog, again, it's super overwhelming. You see all the Apple bundle IDs. So if you ever need inspiration for bundle IDs, just open instruments with OSLog. And you can do cool things like we do. And we have 2 bundle IDs for different loggers. It's not cool. It's just we made a mistake. We just made a mistake. But basically, you can see here, you can see which logger you've got. So I've got my profile logger, which I'm using in the view. I can tap on it, and then I can see my logs. So I can see started edit, canceling edit, starting edit, canceling edit. Now, how do you use this to align with the rest? Like, you have to scroll up to the top, right, to align things? Well, the Apple team, again, thought about this. You can pin things to the bottom. And then you can expand this to the top. I can scroll up to where my hangs are and everything else is. And at this point, I can actually see how things actually align. So what I did before, I could actually align it very, very quickly without having to remember when I pressed start or when I pressed cancel. And here I can see that I might have still some performance stuff to look into, and it aligns very, very well with starting an edit. I can also get the impression quickly that canceling an edit also has some issues. But it's not the profile picture anymore. It's now the text field, which might have to do with some state changes, how I'm re-rendering things. So yeah, it gives me an indication, and it gives me an overview quickly of what I need to fix and where things live. Now, I added another instrument, and this is a bit more complicated, but you're going to see what it does. So signposts are basically little flags, little events that you can send, and they will show up in instruments. And actually, you can do signpost debugging in production as well. So if you get like a specific trace from a user, you can see like the signposts as well. And I built a small utility that will wrap an async method, and it will basically measure that async method. So what you can do is give a signpost interval a name. You can tell it to start, and you can tell it when it ends as well. How many people here have done the datetime, not datetime, but like date now minus start date and date? Okay, this is the equivalent. I still do that, like sometimes I don't have to open instruments. But this is the equivalent with signposter and with instruments. And the way you actually get it is very nice. Again, all the Apple bundle IDs for inspiration. And then we should be able to see somewhere here. Oh, no, we won't be able to see it because I'm not really signposting anything. So if I actually look at where this is getting used, I can go to my profile view. And I'm using it whenever I save the profile. I'm using it to measure how long it takes to save the profile. The reason why I'm doing this is because it's making a call to core data. And I immediately noticed that I was doing something wrong. Sorry, to Swift data. I immediately noticed that I was doing something wrong because it froze the UI, and it took quite a while. So let's try and run the profiler again. We're going to just go on the profile. We're going to edit it a bit, and then we're going to save. And I promise this is the last thing that I'm going to do. I'm going to let you go on the break, have a coffee. And then we are now hopefully going to see, if nothing goes horribly wrong, that we've got a nice little measurement of how long it took to save. And we can go over to the signpost. We should be able to see the one bundle identifier this time. Same logger, because the signpost events are tied to OS log as well. They follow the same kind of architecture. And you can see there's a little thing here called saving profile. And you can see that it's taking 100 milliseconds. We can see the duration. And the cool thing about this is that we can just set the inspection range and zoom over here. And again, as I said before, we can just literally combine it with other instruments that provide us with a lot of information, and we can see what's happening while the profile is being saved. And there are some hitches, there's some brief and responsiveness, but I won't bore you with that, because that's more of a Swift data and actor isolation issue. But yeah, that's basically how you use instruments to debug your code, and some of the tips that I've been learning through the years. So let me go back to these slides if I can. We're not coding anymore, so let's get rid of that. If you found this interesting, I'm running a workshop on the 3rd of December about instruments. So if you want to see things in more detail, I'm going to be doing this, but like times 10 or times whatever time I have in the workshop. And you're going to get like an Xcode project with an app out of it, essentially, with all the performance things that we fixed. And these are all real-world issues that I've had like while building apps. So I'm just collating them all into a sample project that I will actually show. And that's it from me today. Thank you so much for listening. And yeah, you can find me online anywhere.
Thank you very much. I love that during your demo, you went from 160 messages to 173 messages, unread messages.
Hey, at least the notification didn't show, though, which is good.
we're both Spaniards, so I can understand that some people in your family might be chatty. There might be a person asking you if you used cursed.
Yeah,
So
it'll be my mom. Yeah,
you might check. Because my first thought was, I don't even have your number. So, all right, any question? We can take one question, right? And then we're going to go to the break. But I'm sure there's going to be one question, or I hope there's going to be one question. Otherwise, I'll figure it out one myself. All right, we have a question from Manuel.
What's your favorite instrument, Paul?
So I played the piano since I was a kid. That's my favorite. If you meant Apple instruments, SwiftUI, I would say, is the one that I use the most. I think foundation models is quite cool, but I'll use it once, I think, and that's about it. But yeah, SwiftUI, I think.
I was wondering if the question is favorite instrument or favorite template.
Oh, yeah, good point. Yeah. I get very, very upset over that.
All right, it's time for our last coffee pause and give him an amazing round of applause.